Hello there, John Siddique here, and welcome to this week's book club. And you'll have to excuse me if I catch a little cough going or something like that. I've had a pretty bad throat for the last few days, so even reading out loud today, I had to kind of very much pace myself. But I hope you're really well, and I hope you've been enjoying this video series and enjoying kind of looking at the literature, the book group. It's quite amazing, really. Every kind of story we look at then kind of sends people reading other things to the sides and kind of, you know, wanting to know more about the writers and things like that. So it's absolutely wonderful what's beginning to happen in the kind of, you know, we're moving into kind of like wishing to be immersed and feeling very kind of nourished by our reading. So today we looked at, this throat. We looked at a story, Atlantic Crossing by Jeanette Winterson. And I'm sure you've heard of Jeanette Winterson. She wrote Sexing the Cherry and Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, and her autobiography is very well thought of as well. And I have to admit that kind of she's not really somebody I've read. And so I wanted to kind of introduce, thank you, yeah, all gone, thank you. And that was the kind of the part of the point of the group, really, is to kind of, you know, get us reading things that we might not normally read. And it's quite strange that I haven't read Jeanette Winterson, because I make it a point to try and read things that would not necessarily come to me kind of quite naturally. So I make a point of kind of seeking things out. And, you know, we were born or lived in kind of similar locations, and there are some kind of similarities in the childhood, some kind of differences. So I know of her. I'm just amazed it's taken me this long to getting around to actually reading anything by her. I saw the TV series of Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit many years ago. God, was that the 1980s on Channel 4? Can't remember. But you know, you think you might know who an author is by their kind of reputation or by their kind of sort of the circumstances around them. But when you meet them in the writing, it's actually very different. So Atlantic Crossing is, on the surface, a very simple story, and the language is very clear, and it's a very simple read. It's a very easy read, and it's a story of two people, Duncan Stewart and Gabriel Angel, who is a young woman, who are on a cruise, and they're misassigned because of Gabriel's name to be in the same cabin. Everybody thinks that the name Gabriel is a male name, and so she's put in the same cabin as Duncan Stewart, and there's nowhere else for them to go. And kind of what unfolds thereafter is this kind of, it's all told from Duncan's point of view. And he is kind of a gently unreliable narrator, in that we're with him through his kind of changing perceptions of the people around him. It's basically him kind of commenting on people around him and reflecting on his own life, and perhaps thinking that his way is the right way, you know, that he is the unchanging aspect of the story, and yet he changes as things go on. It's really interesting in that it's very beautiful, very light, very funny. There's one or two little almost jokes in there that, if you spot them, are riotous. Some of the things that Jeanette Winterson gets away with in her language is quite incredible. But I'm really put in mind of The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd whilst reading this, especially the song Breathe. So maybe after you have a look at this, put Dark Side of the Moon on, and particularly listen to sort of, you know, Breathe, Home Again section. What else to say about this? People loved it. People just absolutely loved it, and questions that kind of came up were kind of very astute and interesting. Just like kind of, you know, like, well, if a man had written this, could a man have got away with saying the things that Jeanette Winterson's saying? Is she, as an author, taking a particular position when writing this? Is there any way to kind of not do that? How does the idea that Hemingway puts forward, and Hemingway is mentioned in this story, of the writer being transparent and kind of servicing their characters, how true is that? Or has every writer got an agenda? Are they trying to kind of tell the story to kind of get a certain point across? So this is the kind of thing that Atlantic Crossing brought up. I'll read you a little excerpt of it, and I invite you to dig this out. It's a really, really worthwhile read.
Look at these two coming on deck right now. Lesbians, I'll bet. Both about 65, shrunk into their cotton suits and wearing ancient Panamas. The stout one has a face the colour and texture of a cricket ball, and the thin one looks as if she's been folded once too often. What brogues the stout one is wearing, polished like conkers and laced too tight. Shoelacing is a revealing and personal matter. There are crisscross laces, the neat, brisk people who like a pattern under the surface. There are straight laces, who pretend to be tougher than they are, but when they come undone, boy, are they undone. There are the tight ties, the ones who like to feel secure, and there are the slackjacks, who like to leave themselves a little loose, the ones who would rather not wear shoes at all. I've met people who always use a double knot. They are liars. I'm telling you, because I know.
So for our poet, we looked at the Chinese poet TuFu, and TuFu was around in the 8th century, and these are translations by Kenneth Rexroth. And TuFu's poems on the surface seem to be incredibly simple, descriptive things. He's what you might call a non-epic poet. And I chose these because I chose TuFu's writing because we have this expectation that something is meant to happen, that there's meant to be drama, and that because of the kind of involvement in the drama of the protagonist or the view that's being presented, we see through those eyes. And I was, these are incredible, almost pastoral sort of poems with what seemingly are simple images. But to be able to write like this without cliche, to be able to actually see in the first place what is right in front of you in this moment, that's kind of what TuFu is about. I mean, if you think back to sort of when these were written, this is 1200 years ago, nearly 1300 years ago. Buddhism had come into China. There was a tradition called Chan, which is when it went to Japan became Zen. That should give you some kind of insight into kind of what's going on here. That the sacred is in actually seeing what's right in front of us in this moment. Let me read you one of these poems, and this is Sunset.
Sunset by TuFu. Sunset glitters on the beads of the curtains. Spring flowers bloom in the valley. The gardens along the river are filled with perfume. Smoke of cooking fires drifts over the slow barges. Sparrows hop and tumble in the branches. Whirling insects swarm in the air. Who discovered that one cup of thick wine will dispel 1,000 cares?
So there you go. So while that seems incredibly simple, just a painting of images, anyone could do it. Well, if anyone could do it, maybe have a try. And see if we can actually do that without a cliche, allowing ourselves to see what's truly in front of us and then writing it down in clear, accurate language. And the way we kind of got to looking at it within the session was as if Mr. Stewart from our story was placed in exactly the same scene as TuFu. What would he have seen? Because his entire world is interior, because his entire world is his thoughts, his entire world is his ideas about this woman and sort of fantasizing possibilities. What would he have seen? Would he have seen, the sunset glittering on the beads of the curtains? Would he have noticed the spring flowers in bloom at all? So would he have the space for that? So let me leave you with that, and I have to get back home. I have a one-to-one client this afternoon, so I need to get out of book club mode and just kind of come into a simpler version of myself where I'm not kind of holding space for a group but just holding space for one person. So we'll have a 2-week break now, so the next book group will be on November the 9th, so that's when the next video will be as well. So let me wish you a really beautiful couple of weeks. It's half term here in the north of England for school, so we don't run when it's the school holidays, and then I can't do the next week. So yeah, take care of yourself, and I apologise for the throat and the slight bit of distraction today. As I said, I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to just drink warm coffee and enjoy driving home. Much love to you.